Hello and welcome to another episode of World Connect, a show where we get you the latest from around the world. While the Brussels terror attack was the focus this week, US President Barack Obama's visit to Cuba and Syrian forces making their way into Palmyra also grabbed headlines. We'll get you all of this and much more, but first let's set the ball rolling with the focus of the show. Terror strikes again, this time in Brussels, killing over 30 people, wounding hundreds. Manhunt continues even as several people have been detained. Islamic State claims responsibility for the attack. After Brussels' horrific terror attacks, world leaders unite in condemning the attacks that shook Europe. Say we need to show continuous resilience and strength in the face of terror. Nearly 90 years later, a US president visits Cuba, but despite a new thaw in ties, the issue of human rights is still a ground of face-off. Obama also visits Argentina, admits wrong in Washington's policy towards Buenos Aires. Thousands of people chained and confined to filthy sheds despite a government ban. This is the unfortunate cure for Indonesia's mentally ill, raising the fundamental question of the right to live. And Nairobi helps its youth through Slum Symphony. Ghetto Classics, a musical group in the slums of Korigocho, is helping young musicians discover the likes of Brahms and Beethoven, raising the hopes of a better future ahead. For the people of Brussels, Tuesday morning brought with it a fear they knew nothing about. Fear of being targeted by the worst form of violence, terrorism. Coordinated bomb blasts ripped through the otherwise peaceful city, killing over 30 people and leaving hundreds injured. A huge manhunt continues, even as several people have been detained.
It was business as usual for citizens of Belgian capital Brussels on Tuesday morning. But all that changed in a matter of minutes as soon as two powerful blasts rocked the Zaventem airport and Mailbeek metro station, killing over 30 people and injuring hundreds others. A third bomb was later deactivated at the airport. Terror had struck once again and innocent lives had been lost once again. Belgium raised its terror threat to the highest level for a serious and imminent threat. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel called upon his country to show solidarity in this time of tragedy, this black moment for the country. Months after Paris, Brussels was under attack and international unity was on display. The iconic Eiffel Tower and One World Trade Center paid respects to victims with lights of Belgian flag colors. The White House joined in to pay tributes to those killed in the attacks by flying the US flag at half-mast. Hunting for those behind the blasts, Belgian police has identified two suicide bombers as brothers, Khalid and Ibrahim al-Bakrawi. Now the hunt is on to nab a third man who was pictured with the brothers at the Brussels airport on the day of the attacks. A local Belgian newspaper has identified the wanted man as Najim Lashrawi, and he's been named as an accomplice of Paris attacker Salah Abdeslam. The attacks come days after Abdeslam was captured in Brussels. Brussels residents came forward and offered help to those left stranded using the hashtag #IkWilHelpen, which means I want to help in Dutch. Facebook also activated its security check for users located in Brussels. Social media users expressed their solidarity by sharing images of a crying Tintin, the cartoon character which is a national symbol in Belgium.
As Belgians mourned the deadly Brussels attacks, the world community joined in and expressed solidarity and condemned the cowardly acts against the innocent. Vigils were held across the globe, with leaders pledging support to Belgium in overcoming the grief and defeating terror.
Terrorisme a frappé la Belgique.
Terrorism hit Belgium, but Europe was targeted and the whole world is concerned. We need to realize the extent and gravity of this terrorist threat. We are facing a global threat which demands a global response.
Lassen Sie mich für die Bundesregierung und für mich
Let me express our deep shock, both on behalf of the German government as well as myself, about what terrorists did to people in Brussels. When I say this, I'm talking about what terrorists did to all of us.
These were attacks in Belgium. They could just as well be attacks in Britain or in France or Germany or elsewhere in Europe. And we need to stand together against these appalling terrorists and make sure they can never win.
We will do whatever is necessary to support our friend and ally Belgium in bringing to justice those who are responsible. And this is yet another reminder that the world must unite.
The Secretary General hopes those responsible will be swiftly brought to justice. He's confident that Belgium's and Europe's commitments to human rights, democracy, and peaceful coexistence will continue to be the true and lasting response to the hatred and violence of which they became a victim.
Former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic has been sentenced to 40 years in jail for genocide charges. UN judges found Karadzic guilty of the 1995 Srebrenica massacre and of 9 other war crime charges. 70-year-old Karadzic is the most senior political figure to be convicted by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in The Hague. The judges said Karadzic was criminally responsible for the siege of Sarajevo and had committed crimes against humanity in Bosnian towns. They said he had intended to eliminate the Bosnian Muslim males in the town of Srebrenica, where 8,000 Muslims died in Europe's worst war crime since World War II. In a major boost for Syria's grappling Bashar al-Assad regime, its forces have reportedly made significant advancements in the ancient city of Palmyra. Government troops are said to have retaken the ancient city, Palmyra's old citadel. This is the first such advancement for Syrian forces since May last year, when the Islamic State seized the UNESCO World Heritage Site, an adjoining modern town. The United States said it is likely killed several senior leaders of the militant group, including its top finance officer. After capturing the strategically key town, the Islamic State had destroyed 2 2,000-year-old temples in Palmyra, an arch and funerary towers, drawing global outrage. The recapture of Palmyra would mark the biggest reversal for Islamic State in Syria since Russia's intervention turned the tide of the 5-year conflict in President Bashar al-Assad's favor. Setbacks came for Islamic State in the neighboring Iraq as well, with the government forces claiming that they had started clearing villages surrounding Mosul. The major offensive by Iraqi forces is being touted as the beginning of a broader campaign to recapture areas around the Islamic State-held city. Backed by Kurdish forces and a US-led coalition, Iraqi forces launched the assault at dawn on Thursday, recapturing some villages south of Mosul. Now, Mosul is by far the largest population center controlled by the jihadists. Every person has an equal right to live, breathe and enjoy liberty. But thousands of people like Avan in Indonesia, it is a completely different life. Chained and confined to a dark cell for years, Avan has not only lost his freedom, but also his identity as a healthy human being. Despite a government ban on chaining the mentally ill, the practice still continues, raising a big question on the right to live.
Staring into blank space, an expressionless face, shackled to live in confinement. That's the world of Avan, forced to live a life contrary to what he actually needs. And the story is no different from thousands of others. Despite a government ban on shackling people with psychosocial disabilities, the practice is widely in use in Indonesia. Rights body Human Rights Watch has released an alarming report which says that more than 57,000 people with mental health conditions have been changed at least once in their lives. Pasung, as the practice is called, was banned way back in 1977. But at the institutions run by traditional or faith healers, patients are changed and locked up in overcrowded rooms or filthy sheds.
For someone with a mental health condition in Indonesia, the chances are high that they will either be shackled or put in an institution where they face abuse. It is very difficult for many Indonesians today to access even the basic support and services they need.
The report highlights the lack of mental health facilities in Indonesia. There are only 48 mental hospitals for Indonesia's 250 million people. A poor medical and support system also leads to families chaining their members at homes. One of them is 25-year-old Waspia, who lives locked up in a goat shed.
I want to make sure she doesn't run away again.
Currently, over 18,000 people are undergoing Pasung for treatment. The condition of many facilities is atrocious. With no hygiene maintained, many of the inmates sleep, eat, urinate and defecate in the same place. There is only one psychiatrist for a population of 300,000 to 400,000 and a very little awareness about mental health. Deep-rooted superstitions in Indonesian society also add up to worries. A government-launched program that aims to eradicate the practice by 2019 has not been able to make a mark. There is an urgent need to take effective steps to end this practice that continues to put lives of many into darkness and uncertainty. An urgent need to bring light and hope to their lives.
In the US presidential race, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both continued their winning spree by gaining big in the Arizona primaries this week. The victory cemented their status as the frontrunners in Republican and Democratic races that are a long way from being settled. However, Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders kept their fighting spirits up and also won morale boosters. Bernie Sanders won Democratic victories in Utah and Idaho, while Ted Cruz came out on top in the Utah caucuses. It took almost 90 years for a United States president to make a visit to Cuba, and it was historic in many ways when Barack Obama's Air Force One touched down in Havana. There was a tussle of thoughts, ideologies and attitude when he met Cuban President Raul Castro. The second stopover of Obama's two-nation visit was Latin American nation Argentina. Obama visited a memorial park in the country on the 40th anniversary of the Dirty War coup.
Argentine President Mauricio Macri receiving the US President to the Casa Rosada presidential palace as Barack Obama started his official visit on Wednesday. The US President's trip was part of a wider effort to deepen ties and bolster Washington's influence in Latin America after years of coldness. The two leaders marked a turning point in bilateral relations, announcing new trade and economic initiatives. The visit is the first by a US President in nearly 2 decades. President Obama praised Macri for the efforts he took to boost economy.
President Macri is a man in a hurry. I'm impressed because he has moved rapidly on so many of the reforms that he promised to create more sustainable and inclusive economic growth and to reconnect Argentina with the global economy and the world community.
President Obama also tried to shed past as he acknowledged wrongs in US policies towards Argentina. Washington initially backed the 1976-1983 dictatorship in Argentina. The rule saw killings of nearly 30,000 people in a crackdown against junta regime and rights activists. 4 decades of the past still haunts many in Argentina, and they are still not in terms with US move back then. Obama's visit to Buenos Aires coincided with the 40th anniversary of the military coup in 1976. Accompanied by his Argentine counterpart, Mauricio Macri, President Obama visited a monument to attend a ceremony and pay tributes.
There's been controversy about the policies of the United States early in those dark days. And the United States, when it reflects on what happened here, has to examine its own policies as well and its own past. Democracies have to have the courage to acknowledge when we don't live up to the ideals that we stand for. When we've been slow to speak out for human rights, and that was the case here.
Argentina was the second leg of President Obama's two-nation visit, Cuba being the first. He became the first sitting US president to visit Cuba in nearly 90 years. Making a historic address to Cubans, Obama delivered an impassioned appeal for political liberties, including freedom of expression and democracy. Cuban President Raul Castro was present in the audience during the speech as the US President made a case for embargo on Cuba to go.
As President of the United States, I've called on our Congress to lift the embargo. It is an outdated burden on the Cuban people. It's a burden on the Americans who want to work and do business or invest here in Cuba. It's time to lift the embargo.
But as the two nations tried to create history, the issue of human rights continued to haunt them. The two leaders sparred during a press conference as Obama asked Cuba to improve its rights record, while Raul Castro defended Havana by saying it has a good performance on this front. The US president also met Cuban dissidents and praised their extraordinary courage. Obama also took some time out to watch a historic baseball match between the island's national team and the Tampa Bay Rays. Sitting next to him was his Cuban counterpart Raul Castro. Tampa Bay Rays won the match by beating Cubans 4-1.
And as we go ahead, here's how US President Barack Obama showed off his Latin dancing moves as he took to the dance floor during an official state dinner hosted by Argentine President Mauricio Macri in Buenos Aires. Extending his 32-year-long rule, Congo President Denis Sassou Nguesso has secured another term after winning presidential polls. Now, Sassou got 60% votes in the first round of polls last weekend, held under a communications blackout. Oil and timber-rich Congo has been on edge since an October constitutional referendum that ended a two-term limit on presidential mandates. The long-serving leader has ruled the country for all but 5 years since 1979. He was in exile in Paris from 1992 to 97 and is accused by critics of rampant corruption and of stifling democracy. Superheroes faced consequences in reality as Batman vs Superman battled for justice. Zack Snyder's much-awaited Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice hit theatres this week. Fans have been desperately waiting for the big bang release since Snyder's announcement of the project. But with expectations high on Dark Knight series and Man of Steel charisma, the movie appeared crashing down. Critics wrote that there's a lot going on in the film, fleeting cameos from future heavy hitters, the reappearance of beloved characters from the comics, and a script crammed with too many ideas that are occasionally in conflict with each other. Former One Direction singer Zayn Malik released his debut solo album named Mind of Mine this Friday. The new record follows last month's hit single Pillow Talk. Now, Malik left One Direction last March after 5 years with the band. The release date is 1 year to the day since Malik left the hugely popular boy band. The Rolling Stones rocked tens of thousands of Cuban and foreign fans at a free outdoor concert in Havana on Friday. The Stones kicked off their first ever show in Cuba with their hit Jumping Jack Flash. It was first recorded in 1968. The group followed with It's Only Rock and Roll But I Like It, which may carry extra meaning for Cuban fans who once faced discrimination for their musical tastes. Good Friday ceremonies took place across the world with Christians taking out processions and making biblical enactments to mark the day when Jesus Christ was believed to be crucified. Pope Francis presided at a Good Friday service where he heard the Vatican's official preacher urge people and nations not to seek revenge and overcome evil with good. Worshippers held a procession in Jerusalem's Old City along what is believed to be Jesus' last walk through Via Dolorosa. The annual ritual attracts thousands of pilgrims from around the world. In the German town of Bensheim, hundreds of people attended a traditional Good Friday procession. Actors reenacted scenes from the Bible depicting the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. In Sydney as well, hundreds gathered in to witness a reenactment of scenes from the crucifixion of Jesus. Actors from the Wesley Mission performed a stage show for the crowd where Jesus, played by Brendan Paul, carried his cross through the city's streets. They say faith is everything, and for humans, it is the only hope that takes them forward. Pakistan's Quetta city is one such place for many. The mountainous region known as Jabal-e-Noor, or the Mountain of Light, is home to Quran, Islam's holy book. The place is now a shrine, all thanks to two brothers who came up with the idea to preserve the used or old Qurans from desecration.
Deep inside dry and rough mountains surrounding Pakistan's southwestern city of Quetta hides an unexpected treasure. Rows and rows of bags containing millions of Qurans, the holy book of Islam. Two brothers have turned this hill into a shrine that preserves the old or used copies of Quran, safe from desecration. Now known as Jabal-e-Noor or Mountain of Light, the shrine came to existence in 1980 and houses some of the Qurans that are 600 years old.
I thought that we should do something for the preservation of Holy Quran out of what God has given us so that it can be saved.
Even the Quranic verses cut from newspaper are stored here. The brothers have arranged collection points in religious seminaries and mosques to gather Qurans. Over the years, believers have started coming from all over the country to bring their old Qurans or just to pray.
My husband visited this place and prayed to God, who accepted his prayer, and that I believe that our prayer will be accepted.
But now the shrine is becoming a victim of its own success. Dozens of tunnels are already full, although 2 more are under construction, but that may not be enough. The founder brothers of Jabal-e-Noor now want to make a recycling plant. We are trying to find a way to make a recycling plant. If that happens, it will be fine. Otherwise, it will continue. In the future, as long as we have space, we will dig, and we will have to stop when there will be no space left. But finding a religiously acceptable way to recycle Quran is becoming a challenge. Religious scholars approve of only two ways. First is by wrapping the book carefully in a cloth and burying it in the ground, as at Jabal-e-Noor, or placing it in flowing water so the ink of the words written are washed away from the pages. In the meantime, thousands of Qurans left out in the open are still waiting as the administrators of the shrine struggle to create space for the holy books.
Music brings people together, and this is evident from Nairobi's one-of-its-own-kind musical group in the slums of Korogocho. A new youth orchestra called Ghetto Classics has been formed in an attempt to aid the development of Kenyan youth. The orchestra is made up of brass, woodwind and percussion, and the instruments are either donated to its members or borrowed. Here's more on it.
The Korogocho slum on the outskirts of Kenyan capital Nairobi is no different from any other slums. It has filth all around. A life lacking in optimism, full of daily struggles and poverty. Definitely not a place that will inspire art or music. But Korogocho is unique. Soothing sounds coming out of a slum area is what makes it unusual. It's the Ghetto Classics, a youth orchestra that is helping young musicians discover music like Brahms and Beethoven. All the group members are from Korogocho, struggling hard to master the instruments that are either borrowed or donated. But that's not all. Ghetto Classics has a bigger ambition to achieve, to give its members a life full of confidence, to defeat the stigma attached to the lives of slum dwellers. The musical skills they gain here have helped many get a new perspective to life.
They're out of trouble, they're doing good, they're dreaming big, they want more, the community themselves does admit that Ghetto Classics has been the most impactful program because of the skills that we teach the kids, that they stand out as mentors to the other children.
The group has brought world-renowned musicians to Nairobi to support the cause. Famous pianist of Russian origin, Pavel Timofeyevsky, performed at a series of concerts here. The proceeds will be used for funding music education for underprivileged children in the Korogocho slums.
Just like I was inspired when I was a child, when I would meet professional musicians. I mean, you have to see, to have even the hope of maybe wanting to become a professional musician, you have to meet professional musicians. So therefore, I'm very glad that I can do this.
Ghetto Classics member Eric has learned music with the group and is now a saxophonist. Playing a duet with a great musician like Pavel was a lifetime experience for him.
It's really important because, first of all, they motivate us to keep on working hard, keep on practicing, because we also want to be like them, to play international level, play around the world, play for people.
The group is currently teaching classical music to more than 300 children. The performances in Nairobi have been successful in raising more than $5,000 so far, and with more international artists expected this summer, it's going to be more promising by the day.
Well, this brings us to the end of this edition of World Connect. Do send us your feedback. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldconnect.ddnews@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. But before we leave, let's take you to Washington, where thousands of visitors turn out to enjoy cherry blossoms now at peak bloom. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.